Welcome back to Who's Worse, where I cover what I believe to be the worst episode of a particular season of Doctor Who. As always, this is only my opinion. If you think another episode is worse than what I picked, feel free to share your thoughts. This time, I'm taking a look at Season 6, so let's get started. Season 6 marks the end of two eras, the Black and White era and the Second Doctor era. It also happens to be the final season where there are missing episodes, so after this, it's smooth sailing. Let's do that housekeeping one last time. So, how many episodes are missing this time? Only one? Oh dear lord, it's a Christmas miracle! Or rather, a St. Patrick's miracle, since that's the next major holiday. My one regret is that I can't make a joke about space pirates. Point is, we're back to only one missing episode, so that means more options! Well, until I eliminate the top stories. All three of these stories have some noticeable flaws, but only one of them manages to stand out in spite of them: the War Games. It's repetitive at first and it's a bit too long, but it presents some interesting ideas and has a couple of decent villains. Just make sure you have some tissues on standby. Funny how the stories with wannabe Daleks wound up at the bottom. Don't get me wrong, I know why they tried to replace them, but neither of the replacements left as much of an impact as the Daleks did. So, what will it be today? The one with ridiculous costumes, or the one with evil crystals? Congratulations, you so-called destroyers! You're up for review today! This serial has an interesting history, so let's discuss that for a bit, starting with the writer, Norman Ashby. Or rather, the writers, since Norman Ashby is a pseudonym used by Mervyn Heisman and Henry Lincoln. These two wrote The Abominable Snowmen and The Web of Fear, meaning that they were responsible for bringing the Yeti, the Great Intelligence, and most importantly, the Brigadier into the Doctor Who mythos. However, when they were contracted to write this story, problems arose. It was originally meant to be a 6-part serial, but because it was too short on content, it was reduced to 5. This had the unintended consequence of making the very next serial a 5-parter to make up for the missing episode. In addition, their idea for the robotic enemies of this serial, called the Quarks, was different from the final product. For example, they thought that the Quarks should be able to attach an assortment of tools to their arms. This, combined with the other issues they had with the production team, led to them taking their names off of the finished product and using the aforementioned pseudonym instead. Not long after, however, another dispute arrived, this time debating on who owned the Quarks. Heisman and Lincoln argued that they should own the rights, since they created them, but the BBC believed that, as the ones who commissioned them to create the Quarks, they belonged to them. In the end, Heisman and Lincoln won out, but at a price. This story became their last contribution to the show. Funny enough, this serial marked the only major appearance of the Quarks, not counting their cameo in the War Games and the comics they starred in. Ones that neither Heisman or Lincoln were aware of, at that. Their departure led to the cancellation of a third Yeti story that would have seen Jamie leave the TARDIS. Titled The Laird of Maccrimmon, it would have featured the Yeti invading Scotland as the Great Intelligence attempted to take over Jamie's body. Considering his ultimate fate, I can't help but wish this story saw the light of day. But let's not delve into what-ifs. Let's take a look at the Dominators and see if there's something good buried in this troubled mess. We open on a spaceship fleet that appears to have come from the 1950s. One ship lands on the nearby planet of Dulcus. And here we get our first look at the Dominators. Sweet lord, those costumes. They look like they're wearing clamshells and strands of kelp. But would you believe me if I said that these costumes aren't the worst ones this episode has to offer? These two are Rago and Toba, who have stopped by here to get an energy source. How? By drilling through the crust of the planet, of course! But before we get to see their quarks in action, we cut to something flying through the mist. If I didn't know any better, I'd say we're about to see the inside of an observatory. Instead, we get to see the things the Dulcians wear! You thought something that looks like it crawled out of the sea was bad? Try people who wear cupcake wrappers around their bodies! Anyway, these people are en route to a nearby island.
Well, here we are, everyone, the Island of Death.
What's with things having death next to their names? Marinus had the Sea of Death, now this! What's next, the Seeds of Death? Oh, wait, that's actually a thing. Let's actually meet the party, shall we? There's Cully, the eccentric leader with a desire for adventure, and Wahed, Tolada, and Etnin, his gang of adventurers. Wait, that sounds familiar. But while Cully's busy hyping this up as an adventure, their ship ends up running aground, leaving them stranded on the island. That's bad enough, but the island got its name for a reason. It's radioactive. Or rather, it used to be radioactive, as the ship doesn't pick up any signs of radiation. Since there seems to be no danger, the adventurers head out to explore. Unfortunately for the party, they come across the Dominator that has a lust for destruction.
Wait! Quarks, stop! Destroy them!
Cully manages to make it out alive, though with how he's walking, it's as if those deaths were nothing more than an inconvenience. Maybe he's thinking about how he's not getting whatever money they owed him. No, I'm not kidding, they were supposed to pay him for the trip.
But don't come complaining to me if you get yourselves killed, because I don't refund money to... Refund? What am I saying? They haven't even paid me yet. Hey, wait!
Bah, who cares? The TARDIS crew's arrived, and this time we've got Zoe instead of Victoria. Zoe showed up in the previous serial, The Wheel in Space, and stowed away on the TARDIS. Granted, the Doctor immediately noticed her, but she insisted on coming along regardless. Unlike Victoria, I actually have an opinion on Zoe. She's a lot of fun. She isn't my favorite female companion, that honor goes to Barbara cannot be contained right, but she gets plenty of badass moments in her own right. Anyhow, the Doctor's tired from showing Zoe all the threats she could encounter, so he's decided to rest on the peaceful planet of Dulcus. Yeah, peaceful, sure. You know, the last time the Doctor tried going on holiday, he got wrapped up in a plot involving his doppelganger. Even if the audience didn't see Toba killing some Dulcians earlier, chances are they would have figured that this holiday wouldn't last. I should probably check in on Coley. He is busy trying to find his ship while avoiding Toba and his bloodlust. Sadly, Toba finds the ship first. God damn! What was that ship made of? The explosion catches the attention of the TARDIS crew, and it doesn't take long before they find something that contradicts the Doctor's Dulcus is peaceful statement. In the ruins of a war museum, they discover a weapon and some corpses. Oh, I'm sorry, they're dummies, but can you blame me for thinking otherwise? As the Doctor grows more confused about this situation, they're caught by people in hazmat suits. Don't worry, they're just friendly Dulcians from a nearby building. They are Balan, Kando, and Teal, who have arrived to conduct a survey on the island's radiation levels. Since they found the Doctor and company outside, they're stuck in a decontamination chamber. Needless to say, they're not too happy about that, especially the Doctor, who's upset about his clothes getting wet. His mood's about to get worse as Balan confirms that the island was once an atomic testing site. Which begs the question of what happened to the radiation that should be present. I wonder if the Dominators have something to do with it. Back with Coley, he's found the TARDIS along with a strange symbol on the ground. He doesn't get to examine it for long, though. The Dominators show up, forcing him to hide. As it turns out, the symbol marks a drilling site. No doubt a part of the Dominator's nefarious plans. They spot the TARDIS, and Toba asks Rago nicely if he can destroy it. Rago tells him no, causing Toba to pout. Get used to this sequence because it happens a lot. Another drilling site happens to be by the ruins, and both Cully and the Dominator show up. While Cully is discovered by Teal and goes to the survey building, the Dominators take some time to explore the ruins. Rago comes to the conclusion that, since the weapons inside are old, the Dulcians must have developed more. It's rare that I wish a villain was right, but I really wish Rago was right. You'll see what I mean shortly. Unfortunately, Cully's arrival at the survey building complicates matters for the TARDIS crew.
I brought 3 people here on my ship. They've been killed by those creatures, and if you do...
What's so funny?
Now I see it. Yes, 3 people.
Yep, Balan immediately assumes that the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe arrived with Cully. And despite both parties saying otherwise, he doesn't believe them. When Cully brings up what he saw, including the TARDIS and that it might get destroyed, the Doctor and Jamie book it. When they get to the TARDIS, they find tracks leading to the Dominator's ship. Are you holding on to something? You better be, because it's time to see what the quarks look like!
Shall we destroy? Shall we destroy?
Yep, there they are. I'm sorry, but how can the audience take the quarks seriously when they sound like that? They sound like children! I'm not saying children can't be scary, but that voice isn't doing the quarks any favors, especially when combined with their appearance. They look, well, somewhat cute. The one intimidating thing the quarks have going for them is their destructive potential. My friends, prepare yourselves. From here on, this serial's going nowhere but downhill. The Doctor and Jamie are captured and taken to the ship, where they are examined for their potential. Or rather, only Jamie is examined. Radgo makes the mistake of assuming that the Doctor has the same physiology as Jamie. Imagine how he'd react if he did examine the Doctor. This serial might have gone differently. While the Dominators test them, Zoe and Cully are forced to go to the capital for questioning. When they arrive via capsule, Cully barges in on an important meeting. Said meeting was about converting an area for, quote, holiday and relaxation purposes, unquote. Yeah, that sounds important.
Don't you realize what's happened?
And what's that?
A space vehicle has landed.
Oh, really, Cully?
This is yet another thing you'll have to get used to. Cully getting mocked for everything he says. No wonder he hates the Dulcian way of life. So surprise, not even Cully's father believes him. He even interrupts Zoe while she's talking to basically say, "Oh, so you're lying again." Father of the Year, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want you to remember this scene. How most of the Dulcians have, so far, ignored any attempts by other parties to disprove something. Trust me on this one. Back with the Dominators, the Doctor and Jamie decide to play dumb through the tests, which involve a lot of pain. Considering Toba's overseeing these, I can't help but wonder if he's enjoying this. Radgo, however, hasn't completely bought the dumb act, so he decides to continue the testing himself. Again, this could have gone differently if he decided to examine the Doctor. Is it wrong that I want to figure out what would have happened in that scenario? Meanwhile, the survey team is trying to figure out what happened to the radiation. Now, remember that scene I asked you to remember? Well, listen to what Balin has to say about the radiation's disappearance.
I dare say our atomic experts could provide a reason, but it seems pointless to spend time searching for reasons to prove facts.
Oh, really? Even though a fact cannot be a fact unless it is proven to be true. Meanwhile, you were content to assume that the TARDIS crew arrived with Cully, even though both parties argued otherwise. I would say that such a thing would provide at least some evidence that they were separate parties from the start. But nope. Instead, the Dulcians don't bother looking for evidence, and when someone shows up with possible proof, they're ignored.
A fact is a truth.
Not with how you define facts. Let's check on the Doctor and Jamie before I get frustrated. The Dominators try to get them to fire a weapon, but when the Doctor says that neither he or Jamie understand guns, Radgo offers a demonstration by nearly shooting the Doctor's head off. However, the Time Lord gets the last laugh by fooling Radgo into thinking there's two types of Dulcians on the planet. Believing them to be useless, the Dominators leave them alone, allowing the Doctor to ponder about why they're here. It would be a shame if the Dominators happened to overhear him at that point. You see what I mean? I can see so many ways this could go wrong for the TARDIS crew, and I feel like expanding on them. Moving on, Cully decides to return to the island in order to retrieve evidence. Considering how the Dulcians have behaved thus far, I wouldn't be surprised if they flat out rejected it by saying it's just a prop Cully made. Since they have to sneak out, Cully suggests that Zoe should wear some Dulcian clothes.
Well, they're not very efficient garments, are they?
Well, at least you look more like a girl now.
Oh, I'm not sure. They feel impractical.
At least your clothes look good. Nothing in the world can make those cake wrappers look like decent clothes. Unfortunately, they leave right as the Doctor and Jamie head out for the capital. Thankfully, Teal and Kando have enough sense to go look for evidence, much to Balin's annoyance. Unfortunately, they're detected by the Dominators, and Toba has a mighty need to destroy after getting blocked by Rago several times.
So Cully was telling the truth.
Was he?
But Palin...
Where are the robots?
Dude, if Cully was telling the truth about the craft, it wouldn't be unreasonable to guess that maybe he was being honest about the robots as well. Whatever, he gets convinced after the Dominators capture them.
As I thought, they are different. Greater brain power, 2 hearts.
Wait, so the Dulcians have 2 hearts, greater intelligence, and happen to have a deviant in Cully who takes people out on adventures? That thing I said earlier about Cully sounding familiar was a joke. I didn't expect for him to pretty much be the Dulcian equivalent of the Doctor. Speaking of Cully, he and Zoe return to the survey building, right as Toba decides to satisfy himself.
Destroy! Destroy!
What's happening?
I don't know. The door, quick!
Well, the good news is that they managed to escape the building. The bad news is that they wind up in the Dominator's hands, who decide to put them to work at the ruins drilling site. Things aren't much better back at the capital, as the Doctor and Jamie try to explain what's happened to them.
I would be grateful if you could tell me what occurred on the island.
Oh, look, here, we've told you.
Look, the fact that 4 people have come by and explained this situation should give the Dulcians some reason to believe that they're being truthful. I'm all for being skeptical, but when someone denies every piece of evidence thrown their way without consideration, they're acting like an idiot. So after the Doctor finally tells them what the Dominators did, he suggests sending someone to confirm their story.
These Dominators, they let you go free. Why should we fear them?
Weren't you paying any attention? The Doctor explained, probably in great detail, what the Dominators did to them. And you still think they're harmless?
You can't just sit here and do nothing.
Why not?
Haste is not in the Dulcian tradition.
Better do nothing than do the wrong thing.
I hate them. I hate every single one of these councilmen. I hope the Dominators kill them all. After attempting to contact Balin, the councilmen get a good, hard look at a quark, prompting the Doctor and Jamie to get back to the base. Unfortunately, the Doctor didn't think this through, as it would mean coming face to face with said quark. Also, he has jelly babies, something that many people associate with the 4th Doctor. I don't blame the Doctor for eating them after dealing with the idiocy that was the Dulcian Council. Back on the island, Toba explains the situation to the group, threatening that if they're too weak, they'll be destroyed. Zoe and Cully decide that they need to fight back, and while they manage to get Teal on their side, Balin and Kando refuse, citing that resistance leads to violence, which will lead to more violence. Look, I get where they're coming from, they want to avoid violence. But when they're in a situation where fighting back is their only option, they would rather do nothing? I don't feel like arguing right now, let's just move on. The Quarks report that all but one of them, probably Zoe, are showing signs of fatigue, so Rago decides to work them to exhaustion. It doesn't take long before someone is unable to continue. Zoe tries to capitalize on this in order to get inside the ruin and retrieve the gun, but is stopped by another Quark. Meanwhile, the Doctor's busy trying to shut off the capsule's autopilot. When he succeeds, Jamie rightfully questions whether or not he can land it.
Of course I can.
And then we return to the Capitol, where they're discussing what to do, ultimately placing their faith in the Chairman of Emergencies Committee.
The facts of this emergency are non-conclusive.
What, the destroyed room didn't clue you in? So the Chairman offers 3 options. Fight, submit, or flee. Guess which one they choose?
So we can do nothing?
Nothing, except wait.
Yep, they're just gonna do nothing because of course they would! Back on the island, the capsule that the Doctor and Jamie were in has run aground, but don't worry, they're okay. The Doctor seems a bit too amused by this turn of events, though. They eventually find Zoe and the others and decide to split up in order to reach them. I'm sure this will end well. Meanwhile, the group tries to get someone into the ruins again, this time by feigning exhaustion in order to distract the Quarks. They succeed, but just as Cully is about to take the robots out, Jamie shows up and makes him miss his chance. He then tells Cully to wait for the Doctor.
What are you doing?
Well, would you look at that? I guess splitting up on an island filled with danger isn't a good idea after all. So the doctor is thrown into custody, and Toba goes out to find Cully. No guesses as to what he does once he figures he's in the ruins.
Quack! Destroy!
In the midst of this destruction, Jamie manages to blow up a quark. Unfortunately, this prompts Toba to completely decimate the place. This nearly proves to be the tipping point for Rago, as he threatens to turn the quarks against Toba unless he submits. Which he does, of course. As bloodthirsty as he is, I don't think he feels like dying anytime soon. Most of the group is sent back to the ruins, save for the Doctor and Zoe, as Rago wants to question them about the planet. Meanwhile, it turns out that Cully and Jamie survived! Good thing Teal told Cully about that shelter when he did. Huh. I guess Cully's got the same tastes as the Doctor. Wait, what am I saying? Sweet Lord, I've become too Jamie trash! So Rago's questioning is going over smoothly. He knows about the capital, but he wants to know how to get there. Realizing that the Dominator's ship could tell him what he needs to know about their objective, the Doctor tells him about the capsule he and Jamie used. When he gets to said capsule, he looks less than impressed, but he's willing to use it.
I'm going to the alien leader to investigate potential slave force. You will remain here and complete the drilling operations.
No, I think Toba should go to the capital. I think he'd have a grand time there. At the shelter, Jamie and Cully manage to shift the rubble enough to open the hatch, where they see the quarks again. They decide to try taking out some more robots, albeit in a crude way. This causes Toba to investigate, but in doing so, he leaves the Doctor alone, allowing him to figure out what happened to the radiation on the island. The ship absorbed it and placed it into a storage unit.
Director.
Oh great, we're going back to the capital! As the leader suggests showing the Dominators that they mean no harm, Rago makes a dynamic entry. He gets tired of the Dulcians complaining rather quickly.
Acceptable to the Dulcian. Destroy!
Yes, Rago, yes! Destroy them all! Ahem. Back at the ruins, Kando accidentally mentions Cully, and Toba decides that the best way to get her to talk is to torture Teal. Huh, he managed to restrain himself for once. Or he's into torture about as much as he's into destroying things. I don't know. He orders them back to the ship when he realizes that Jamie might be involved in the incident, allowing him to question them alongside Balan, Zoe, and the Doctor. When they don't comply during his interrogation, Toba indulges in his urges and threatens to kill them one by one, starting with Balan. Before he can set his sights on the Doctor, Rago returns, and he's far from happy with Toba's behavior. The only things keeping him from likely executing Toba are that 4 of the drill holes have rockets in them, and their little atomic device is almost ready to go. Later on, Jamie and Cully return to the shelter, where they spot the group alongside Toba and more quarks. Jamie decides that they need to get the group down to the shelter, but how are they going to do that with the quarks around? Simple. Trip up a quark with a bedsheet. No, I'm not joking, that's really how they stop a quark. And to think, people thought these could replace the Daleks. Sure, there was that one time a Dalek was stopped by a thaw cloak, but in their defense, losing their connection to the static electricity in the ground was their weakness back then. The group eavesdrops on Toba's conversation with Rago, and they learn a few things. 1, the quarks are nearly out of power, something that's been mentioned several times throughout the serial. And 2, their fleet leader told Rago that the Dulcians aren't fit for their plans, so they'll die with their planet. However, the Doctor finally figures out what they're trying to do. They want to create a molten radioactive power source by blasting through the thin crust with rockets to create a volcano, then inserting the atomic seed device into the center drill site, allowing it to explode within the volcano and annihilate Dulcus. As he and Zoe try to figure out how to end this wicked plot, Jamie offers a solution. Dig through the shelter and catch the seed device on its way down. The Doctor looks absolutely enamored with that idea, even if he does insult Jamie in the process.
It's so simple, only you could have thought of it.
Oh,
With time against them, the group begins work on their tunnel, with the Doctor kicking things off by using his sonic screwdriver to cut through the wall. This isn't the first time he's used it. That happened in Fury from the Deep. But since that serial's completely missing, this is the earliest instance of its use that survives. So congrats, the Dominators. You have that going for you, I guess. Now, part of their plan involves distracting the Dominators and the Quarks, something that Jamie and Cully have plenty of experience in. How will they pull it off this time? Simple, by lobbing miniature bombs at them, created using materials from the shelter's medkit.
It works!
Yeah, keep laughing, Doctor. It won't be so funny when your ass nearly gets hit by explosives. So Jamie and Cully begin their own brand of destruction by throwing explosives everywhere, culminating in them blowing up Toba and the Quarks right above the shelter. He survives, albeit royally pissed, and Rago decides to handle the group personally. But thanks to the Quarks' power being too low, the most they do is injure Cully. At this point, it comes down to the wire. Will the Dominators destroy Dulcus, or will the group intercept the seed device?
Well,
That's a silly question to ask. Of course they catch it in time. However, it turns out that the device is sealed, so the Doctor has to find another way to...
have you thought of something?
And that's a face that screams, I've come up with quite the cheeky idea. Whatever it is, he's gotta book it. All together now!
Run, bitch! Run!
As the Dominators leave the planet, the Doctor leaves them a little farewell gift.
Stop countdown. Impossible countdown is starting! Obey!
And so the story ends with a clear-cut victory for the TARDIS crew, right? Well, no. For one thing, they still have to escape the volcano that formed. And another thing, the Dominators said they notified the fleet of Dulcus' destruction. Who's to say that they won't finish what Rago and Toba started? Considering that only 3 Dulcians might be willing to fight back, I can't help but think that Dulcus is completely and utterly screwed. Anyway, that was the Dominators and... Sweet lord, I hit a whammy this time. I'm going to be blunt. I hate this story. How much? I would willingly recite the hate speech from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream and direct it towards this story, despite never reading the original novel or playing the game. Throw that on the bucket list for another day. I'm saving the things I liked for last, so let's start with what went wrong with the story. First off, the Quarks. I felt like they could have worked, especially since we got a taste of their destructive capabilities during the first episode. However, the moment they were revealed, any hope of them remaining a frightening creature died. Look at those arms, they just want some hugs. And if their looks weren't bad enough, their voices just made things worse. They sounded too childlike to be taken seriously. Then there were the Dulcians, namely the older ones like Balin and the Councilmen. When danger was staring them in the face, they decided that doing nothing was better than fighting back. They came across as being supremely dense, as no matter how many times either the TARDIS crew or Cully tried to explain things to them, they refused to believe them. And yet they believed that they didn't need reasons for a fact to be true. I hated them so much, I was hoping Rago would decide to kill all of the Councilmen. Keep in mind that both of the Dominators were awful people. What with their tendency to call everyone else primitives and their desire to enslave everyone, they were not the kind of people to cheer for. Speaking of, the Dominators weren't really interesting villains. While I enjoyed the initial disagreements between Rago and Toba, they tended to drag after a while, since Toba can't curb his bloodlust long enough to get their mission done. There wasn't much revealed about them or their species either. All we learned was that they did research on Dulcus, and their race ruled over 10 galaxies. They weren't awful villains, but some more backstory would have been nice. But the biggest issue I had with this serial was its moral, one that you could not escape from because everything in this story was tied to it. Pacifism is bad! I get the idea. Pacifism doesn't solve everything. However, it was so heavy-handed here. From what I've gathered, the writers made this in response to the hippie movement from the 1960s, since both of them were alive during World War II and believed that peace was something to fight for. And again, that's understandable, but I felt like it wasn't handled appropriately. I think it could have been better if the Dulcians decided to send some people to the island to fight back, citing Rago's murder of a councilman as their reason for it. Instead, the councilman disappeared after the 4th episode, and there was no reason to believe that they would stop another attack from the Dominators, even if the fleet decided to finish the job and turn Dulcus into an energy source. I can't imagine Teal, Kando, and Cully handling them on their own, that's for sure. If you want to see a serial with this message done right, go watch the Daleks. The Thals are considerably more interesting and sympathetic, and they actually decide to fight back against the wretched Pepper Pots. So was there anything good in this story? Well, the acting was good, even if Rago took a bit of time to get used to. Really, I thought he was the worst acted in the story, but after my 3rd viewing, he grew on me. Also, there's explosions. I'm a simple person. I love me some explosions. But other than those things, that was it. Overall, this was yet another serial that got worse the more I watched it. Between the insufferable Dulcians, the laughable Quarks, and the ham-fisted Moral, I found myself getting increasingly frustrated. In comparison to other serials, this one's among the worst of the worst. The only thing keeping it from being at the very bottom is that it didn't assault my senses. If you really want to watch this story for completionist purposes, go ahead. Otherwise, stay far, far away. Well, I'm sorry to say that this marks the end of the 2nd Doctor's era on this show, but we're not quite done with him yet. Tune in next time as I count down my personal favorite episodes featuring everyone's favorite cosmic hobo. Trust me, I need something positive after dealing with this nonsense.
Colonel,